Ambassador, how are you? How's your family amidst these challenging times right now?
Well, it's very challenging times, especially being far away from home, because, I would start in saying thank God that my family is safe. Difficult situation in Israel. We see the numbers, more than 1,200 deaths, and the numbers are still growing, but it takes time to identify the dead bodies. Some of them are totally burned. Terrible situation. But I have to say that although we suffered such an enormous terror attack, the sense in Israel and Israeli society is of solidarity, and we are now united in order to do now one thing, and that's basically fight back against the Hamas, which we saw is a terror organization targeting our civilians, our people. And now, after Hamas declared war, we have to fight back and defend ourselves, and that's the next stage.
Do you have a constant communication with your family right now? Where are they right now exactly?
Well, my family actually is all over the country. One son is living in the north, one in Tel Aviv, one in Jerusalem. Israel is a modern country with technologies, and we have to understand it's a small country.
Yeah.
But the area which was affected is actually in the southern part of Israel, close to Gaza. That was area which was directly attacked, where the terrorists entered and butchered the citizens and the people living there in the local communities. But Israel is, of course, bigger. Other cities are being attacked by missiles, by rockets. It's challenging, but of course you can still continue your daily life, although daily life has been interrupted. Universities are closed, schools are closed, most businesses are still closed. Essential businesses are open. You can buy food and essential needs to keep your daily life. But all the infrastructure is working, sort of water, electricity, communications. So the Filipino OFWs, for an example, and myself, we talk at night, WhatsApps, Viber. So communication is working, life continues, and what we're seeing now is very, very strong sense of solidarity. We can see many Israelis who are coming back to Israel in order to join the military, the reservists. So many of them came actually also back from the Philippines. They've been here. The Philippines is a very attractive destination for Israelis. Beautiful, island country. We know the Philippines, nice people. So many of them have been also here in the Philippines, and they made the way back to Israel out of patriotism and out of solidarity and wanting to join this war to defend Israel and hopefully finally to eradicate the terror infrastructure which is in Gaza, which is attacking us again and again, but for some reason they decided to go in this unprecedented scale of attack, which everybody says, okay, enough is enough. We cannot continue living like this.
Ambassador, I'm sorry, Jay. Ambassador, let's talk about the meeting you had yesterday with the president. How was your discussion with the president?
Actually, the meeting was very, very good meeting. The president was very sympathetic, very warm. He wanted I briefed him about the situation, of course, what happened in the first few hours, a bit of the background of the conflict. We talked about the chart of the Hamas. And of course, the situation itself, it's not in the same scale, but it reminded us of Marawi, because also the Philippines is a country which is suffering from terrorism. So I felt his heart, I felt he's with us, and I think he came out also with a very clear statement after that. I explained to him, of course, we discussed what is going to be the next stage. We discussed the OFWs in Israel. I opened with expressing my sympathy and condolences over the news which came the same evening, yesterday evening, or yesterday morning already, of the two OFWs that were identified as dead. And I talked about our approach and our sense of responsibility over the OFWs in Israel. And I would say more than that, over every foreigner that is in Israel. Because I did raise this question when we were briefed by the Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs, all ambassadors. And I raised the question, asked the minister, what is happening with the OFWs? Because there are still unaccounted Filipinos in Israel. And he said this very clearly. Our approach to the Filipino workers, same as other nationals, is exactly as same as to the Israeli citizens. We will not leave you behind, we will take care of you. So we were helped in getting out 20 Filipinos that were in Gaza Strip, in some of those kibbutzim, hiding in the sheltered rooms, what we call mamad. It's a sheltered room which every apartment has today in Israel. We helped evacuate them in the midst of still fighting and shooting. We helped to take them out. There was one OFW that was injured and he was treated in an Israeli hospital. Others were put in hotels together with their employers. So we are doing our best. Unfortunately, we identified 2 dead Filipinos. We have to understand that it's taking time because of the conditions of the bodies. Unfortunately, the Hamas has they're not human beings. What can I say? I mean, the torture and what they have done there, they killed families, they burned homes with the people inside. I mean, horrific pictures are coming out of there. So even to identify the bodies takes time. Quite often it's DNA. And we'll not come out with names until we know exactly and we identify that person who is human being. So again, I explained and I of course expressed my sympathy and condolences and our efforts, because we have still unaccounted for Filipinos. Of course, I talked about the OFWs in Israel who are living in the rest of the country, and to the best of my knowledge, they do not want to be repatriated. And again, I think the reason is because they are part of our families. And I always mention the OFW, which is taking care of my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a Holocaust survivor, 93 years old. How can he live alone? He's too old. We are here in the Philippines, and he has with him the Filipina caregiver. And now lately he's not so well, and she's staying with him also weekends. Of course, she's being paid for, but she's staying with him and she's taking care of him. So we're so appreciative. She lives with him in his house. She takes care of his financial affairs. She's doing everything. We give her the responsibility and we trust in her, and we get the same back. So she's really part of us. If there are issues, would ask me, what are you doing about the welfare of the Filipinos? Filipinos in Israel can get, if there are issues and tension, there is a social worker who will come to talk to them, to help settle the issues that are maybe causing tension between her and so I'm talking maybe too long, but in order to understand that they are part of us and their family. And finally, the president came with a very strong message of sympathy to Israel, to the Israeli country, to the state of Israel, and to the people of Israel, which are now recovering from a terrible terror attack. And of course, we're preparing to the next stage, and a condemnation to terrorism, because fighting terrorism is a global effort, because terrorism is something that democracies, that liberal countries like Israel, like the Philippines, cannot tolerate.
Can you expound more, Ambassador? When you talked earlier, you've mentioned about the similarities of what happened in Israel, the Gaza Strip, and what happened to the Marawi siege in the Philippines, so that Filipinos can understand.
So, what we saw, in Marawi, we're talking about activists of ISIS. Hamas is a terror organization. We saw what they have done now in Israel, which is very similar footage that we see of ISIS in different countries that were based. The charter of these organizations, and if you look at the charter of the Hamas, which is the most important document, the charter, that is their ideology. When you read this charter, it says that the Hamas is there in order to eradicate the state of Israel and to enter into a jihad and not allow any Jew or Israeli to live there, we have to kill them. This is in their charter, because they consider Israel as an Islamic land, belongs to the Islamic people. We cannot agree to have Israelis, Jews who are not Muslim to live there. And calling for jihad, killing us. So I think ISIS is exactly with the same ideology. And that's something, as I said, that's a threat to every democracy and liberal country today. This is why, and I did talk with the president, and I told him we're getting unprecedented international support. Of course, the Philippines, but look at the very strong statements coming from President Biden, coming from other leaders around the world, and that's showing the international solidarity and support. End of the day, is very important politically and very important for the people. I mean, the people of Israel, I mean, in a way, Israelis are like Filipinos. The value of families, we are warm people, we like to host other people, and sympathy and support are very important.
You've mentioned that they are also building tunnels underneath them.
Yes. The Hamas, maybe that's a good opening to discuss what is the next stage. Because what we are seeing now, we are now in the final stages of stabilizing in Israel and preparing ourselves for the next stage, which is entering into the second stage of the war, which is basically making sure that there is no more facility of Hamas terror infrastructure in Gaza, which will be used to attack the state of Israel and Israeli citizens. Bombing from the air is not enough, but let me say a word about the bombing in the air. I saw before, you showed the footage of the buildings that are being bombed in Gaza. These are not just residential buildings, we are indiscriminately, we're just bombing and that's it. No, we're not targeting civilians. We are targeting specific buildings, and I showed it to the president. Each building that was bombed has an ID, we know what's inside there. And all the buildings that were bombed were all Hamas infrastructure, Hamas facilities. Unfortunately, the Hamas has facilities in mosques, and we saw ambulances previously, where the ambulance goes to an open area. Operatives are going out of the ambulance, firing a rocket towards Israel, going back into the ambulance, and as if continuing back to the hospital. So they are from hospitals, mosques, schools of UNRWA, of the UN, residential buildings. So meantime, we're attacking from the air infrastructure, which we know. However, Hamas, same as in Marawi, has built a whole city under Gaza, underground, in bunkers. So the leaders, and probably also the hostages are now under Gaza, in those tunnels, in those bunkers, hiding and waiting. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces, you cannot eradicate everything from air.
Yes.
We'll probably, and I don't know the exact plans of the IDF, we'll probably move in.
Yeah.
We'll see probably even worse pictures. I mean, the soldiers will be fighting. So we have to be ready for that, and this is why the IDF is not yet responding in full force, because we have to be fully equipped, not only equipped, but ready for that entrance. We can talk later, because there are also other borders, and that's also an issue. We have to go in, identify those bunkers, and make sure that we are not attacked once again by those terrorists. We are not butchered and treated in such a way in the future.
Ambassador, is there anyone currently mediating or any negotiation or ongoing discussion between Israel and Hamas?
This is not the stage for negotiations. We are now still burying our dead. People are still in hospital being treated. We are in a war. The war was initiated and started by Hamas early Saturday morning in the midst of a Jewish high holiday, Simchat Torah, on the Sabbath, on the Saturday, which is a Jewish holiday. So this is not a time yet to talk about peace and initiatives of peace. And I have to say, when you come and suggest, let's talk about peace, who with? Hamas is a terror organization. Hamas would not, and you've seen the charter, they say there might be a ceasefire with Israel, a temporary ceasefire, but they could never create peaceful relations and recognize the right of Israel to exist. This is something that I think important for Filipinos to understand, because it's a reality that I think in the Philippines is not clearly understood, because you take it for granted. And I'm very happy about it. You take it for granted that Philippines is here to stay. And rightly so. It's your country, your homeland. Now, our homeland, Israel, is the homeland of the Jews, as you know, we were expired 2,000 years ago. We were a Jewish community in minority for 2,000 years. Finally, after many decades of persecution, after the Second World War, the Holocaust, when 1/3 of the Jewish people were murdered by the Nazis, we were able to get finally back a Jewish homeland. This homeland for the Jews, which is supposed to give us the safety and assurances, and it does, is being attacked and is not recognized. I didn't mention Iran, which is supporting Hamas. So Iran calls for the destruction of the so-called Zionist entity. So making peace with Hamas is, as long as the Hamas does not change their basic fundamental approach to Israel, the charter, who do you negotiate with? Unfortunately, when you have the Palestinian Authority controlling the West Bank, then obviously there's a political entity when we can negotiate them, but they are not controlling Gaza. It's Hamas who is controlling Gaza.
So, Ambassador, will this conflict last long?
We are giving a very clear message to the world, and it didn't start today. 2005, Israel disengaged from Gaza Strip. We pulled out Israeli villages who were inside the Gaza Strip. And we said, we're moving out of Gaza. Gaza would be free from what you call Israeli occupation. We moved exactly to the international borderline. We said, okay, we're out of Gaza, no occupation, no reason to fight us. And the idea was that Gaza will become independent and start now building and developing its economy, supply all the good services for the people. Israel continues until now, until 3 days ago, we continue to supply electricity and water to Gaza where they didn't have enough. So all the added electricity and water, we supplied. Now, the idea was to have them develop economic projects. Until last week, we give employment to the Palestinians. They can enter from Gaza to Israel to work. Very important, as you know, employment, right? Secondly, we develop economic projects in the Gaza Marine, a project to find the exploration for natural gas in the coast, in the Sea of Gaza, which is supposed to help Gaza, not Israel. All kinds of economic initiatives that will enable to develop the economy. However, we were very careful that it will help the economy and society, not the Hamas. And that was always a challenge. But we always warned the international community. We cannot support the Hamas, but the Hamas took over controlling Gaza. They are the government. So as long as the Hamas, it is a very complicated situation. Because the Hamas, we don't want the people to suffer. We want the Palestinians, and it's important to say, the Palestinians are not the enemy. Our enemy is Hamas. Not all Palestinians are Hamas. We are trying to eradicate, to destroy the facilities of the Hamas only. And let me also emphasize, we are warning the civilians, even before attacks, quite often, move away. This was also announced now. Keep away from Hamas infrastructure. We don't want to hit innocent people. unlike the Hamas that is targeting innocent people, Israeli Defense Forces are not targeting civilians. We are targeting only Hamas operatives. So as long as the Hamas is really the governing the Gaza Strip, it's difficult to say what will be the solution. And in my opinion, we have to encourage and help in some way that the Palestinian Authority would be able to gain control of Hamas changing the charter. And then if you have a political entity that is willing to recognize each other, then we can start talking.
Yes, Ambassador, as of the moment, how many areas in Israel have been penetrated by this Hamas militant group?
So the penetration was a few kilometers from the border with Gaza, only the southern part, up to I think 15 or 20 kilometers into Israel. But the rest of Israel, there's no penetration yet, but we can talk soon because we have now challenges on the northern border. Slowly there's some escalation in the north, but so they basically butchered our citizens and civilians and Filipinos and other foreign nationals who are either living in the very close vicinity to Gaza Strip. There was a big party on the beach, unfortunately, with I think 3,000 people partying on the beach when the Hamas operatives came in. So quite a lot of them were brutally murdered, and it reminded that some of the pictures there reminded us the Holocaust. I mean, just shooting innocent people gathered together in a small group in a hole and shooting them to fall into the hole, into the ground. So the rest of Israel was not penetrated. The central part of Israel is being targeted by rockets that are being fired from Gaza until now. Even with this, what's happening now, they are still firing rockets on Israeli cities, getting all the way to Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem. Whenever there is an attack, there is a siren going on, because our radar systems can identify a shooting of the missile, a firing of a missile. There is a siren going on. Also, the radios, TV will all have an announcement, and people have, according to the distance, they have a few seconds to enter into the safe room or into the shelter, and each house has either safe room or shelter, so they have a certain amount of seconds to be there in order to be protected from the attack. So this is the reality today.
So what's the bottleneck that Israel having a hard time to counter this militant group?
So specifically now, you mean?
Yes.
So we started with their air attacks, which have started, and we have bombed, I think, more than 2,400 air raids on specific facilities, which includes Navy bases, which include vehicles, who are all kinds of targets. And we're making sure that the entire Israel is protected. You have to realize, when I say about Israel not being accepted in the Middle East, you have to understand that currently now we have Hezbollah, which is in what we call controlling southern Lebanon, which is the northern part of Israel, and they are on the border. Hezbollah is preparing itself for many years for war against Israel. They have a lot of missiles. They have trained people who are training in Syria, for an example, and in Lebanon. They're fighting in Syria, so they have now a lot of skills and knowledge, and they're trained, and they are on the northern border. We have to make sure that we don't suffer surprises, and that we can protect ourselves in the northern border. We have also Syria. In Syria also, there are specific Islamic Jihad and other terror organizations in Syria, and we have to make sure the border there is protected. So we have recruited approximately 350,000 people from the reserve army. Those are people who have been soldiers. All Israeli is recruited to the military at the age of 18. So we're in the final process of dispatching 350,000 reservists to the different locations that are prepared, all the logistics and everything around, making sure that Israel is safe, and then we can all the final planning for the raid itself, and then we'll be probably entering. But again, I don't know exactly because the war plans are not obviously done from here, but in the headquarters in Israel.
Ambassador, do you ever see that the two-state solution for Israel and Palestine ever working? Will there be an end to this never-ending conflict? Some are commenting as backward and divisive it is, apartheid governance or sanctioned racial segregation can work.
So, will there ever be peace? Let me start. There is a very ancient Jewish prayer, which says, Oseh shalom b'momav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Israel v'imru amen. This is in Hebrew. We pray to Almighty God that will bring peace on us and on the world. And that's a Jewish prayer which we pray it, I think, about 5 times a day. We have 3 prayers a day and 2. So this is, the desire for peace is rooted in our Jewish heritage and in the Israeli principles and politics. However, we have to understand that Israel is, as I said before, you cannot take the existence of Israel for granted. When Israel was established in 1948 as a young country, the moment we announced independence, the Arab armies of the entire Arab world, all the Arab countries surrounding Israel, decided to attack Israel, to destroy this young state. Now, we were very decisive, and we knew that we have to defend ourselves, otherwise we'll disappear. We have no homeland. We don't have so many islands, unfortunately. So, and since 1948, 1956, 1967, 1973, there are so many wars that we had to fight to defend ourselves. Now, again, as I said, if we did not defend ourselves, Israel would not exist. We would not be here. There would not be an Israeli ambassador to the Philippines. Thank God, since then, we were able to establish a political process and peace agreements with Egypt in 1979, with Jordan, and 3 years ago, historical Abraham Accords with United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Morocco, and you can see that there are still different initiatives in other Gulf countries, Saudi, there are still initiatives, and that's the direction. However, as long as there is no acceptance and recognition, when you have a terrorist organization such as the Hamas, such as Islamic Jihad, such as Hezbollah, we have to continue fighting. Now, this last major attack, brutal attack against Israeli civilians and peaceful people is not standing on its own. We are suffering every now and then, can be every few days, can be every few weeks, unfortunately, in the last few months, a lot of incidents of terror attacks where you might say 1 or 2 people are killed or injured. It can look very small incident here, but we have to remember, also we say this in Jewish tradition, one person is considered like the entire world. So you cannot say, we lose 1 or 2 people every few weeks. A country cannot live in an environment, in a hostile environment of being attacked and terrorized. So we have to fight continuously against specific terror cells and organizations within West Bank, in different places. But what will really be the final solution? Of course, it should be a political process of agreement, of understanding. But at this stage, with Gaza, we don't have anybody to talk a political process because there is no willingness and openness to discuss peaceful relations. We are not, and I'm saying this it's very unfortunate, very unfortunate.
Ambassador, many were wondering why there are so many casualties in this conflict. Is there a failure of intelligence considering Israel is highly regarded for its military security? Was Israel caught by surprise?
So, of course, we saw what happened, and I think it's quite clear that we were caught by surprise. But it's not only caught by surprise. You have to understand they chose this day because it was the Sabbath, the Jewish day, the Jewish Sunday, you would say, and it was a Jewish high holiday, Simchat Torah. People were celebrating. The entire government and country is in a different mode of celebration. Just compare it to Christmas time in the Philippines. So it's not, yes, obviously there are reasons that this happened. Those questions would be addressed and looked at after this war is over. At this stage, we are fighting our independence, we are fighting for our lives against a terror organization, and we are focusing now on the war. For that reason, yesterday, we established a special war cabinet with another party from the opposition. In Israel, we have a coalition, we have an opposition. The political setting is quite complicated. And we're actually in very decisive political struggle internally until last week. But now realizing that we have to unite and to fight as one. So yesterday, one of those big parties of the opposition joined specifically to be there in the war cabinet. The other opposition parties are supporting from outside any action vis-a-vis the war. Nobody now is talking about politics. We are focusing and uniting, and all Israelis are now patriots in supporting the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Forces and supporting the people in this war. When this will be over, we'll ask all the very tough questions, and a lot of questions to be asked. How did this happen?
Yeah. Before we end, Ambassador, I have just a last question. How can we combat the spread of misinformation on social media that involves the sharing of recycled and, of course, altered videos related to the Israel and Hamas conflict?
So I think it's very important to look at the facts. Sometimes it's easy, to see the pictures, the footage, and not understand the background. So, and this is why I'm really doing an outreach to people through TV channels, like here this morning, and thank you for having me here. I think it's very important. This engagement and those real tough questions are very important in order to explain what is happening and what is the reason for what is happening. So when you get footage, when you get photos, I think it's important that also you yourself, the viewer, each one of us, will first look and try to understand, is this picture real? Because there's a lot of fake news. And secondly, ask the question why and try to get the facts. We as an embassy, we are, again, we're not a media outlet, but we're trying to spread out information also through our social media. There are a lot of sources in Israel. So I do recommend to enter into Israeli sources to see what is coming out of Israel. And I would say, your job as media and for the people who are intelligent viewers, look at different sources, that you can see different sources of information, and then you can get really the broader scale of what's happening on the ground.
And finally, Ambassador, kindly send a message to the Israelis here in the Philippines, and also the Filipinos in Israel, especially those who really want to repatriate and leave your homeland. Your message for them.
So I would say, first of all, I want to again express my sympathy and condolences to the families of the OFWs, and to pray for the safety and that we will find the 3 unaccounted for yet, that they'll be found actually somewhere there alive, still hiding. Secondly, for our OFWs in Israel, you are part of us, part of the family. However, if you want to be repatriated, Israel is a free country, liberal country. The airport in Israel is open, and we'll make sure it's open because freedom of movement is critical. And if you want to fly back home, There are still flights. There is no problem. However, you are part of our families. We are responsible for your safety and your well-being. And I think you can feel with us at home, you are part of us. And we appreciate very much your work for our elderly and our disabled people. And we appreciate it very much. And to the families here, I think you realize how much we do in order to protect also the OFWs in Israel. And of course, you have the Philippine Embassy in Tel Aviv, all the different, the Philippine government, we're all doing our best to protect Filipinos in Israel. Thirdly, I wanted to say that expressions of sympathy and support for Israel, both from the political leadership here, and we heard it yesterday very clearly from the president, we appreciate it very much. It is important for Israel, but also different initiatives are coming from civil society to express their support and sympathy for the Israeli people and to express their support in the global and Israeli fight against terrorism are very important also for the Israeli people, the Israeli nationals, to feel that there are other nations that care for us, that we're not only targeted by terror organizations, but there are other people who care for our safety and well-being. This is important for us as Israelis, and I want to say thank you because so many people have reached out to me and my colleagues at the embassy in very warm and personal, really I was very emotional. I got so many messages, and especially the first few days when, you know, we don't know exactly what's happening and who was hurt and who was not, and you don't know what. So it was really very, very comforting to get those messages, and it made me feel very much welcomed and part of the Philippine society, and I wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Ambassador, and our prayers are with you, with your family, and to everybody who are affected with this Israel-Hamas war. And we look forward to hearing from you as the situation of your homeland develops.